Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. I said that with a certain amount of energy there. Today, I have the privilege of being in conversation with an educator and an artist who creates figure drawings, collages, installations, and animations that depict her subject's relationship to culturally loaded objects and landscapes. Please welcome the great Zoë Charlton. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rob. You are so kind. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. It's just, having the video, since we're doing it through Zoom, which people still think I'm doing everything in person, which is funny. I guess that's a statement on the audio quality. We're both it's just all teeth. We're all just smiling the day away. And that's a great way to do a Wednesday recording.
Right on.
So I gave that copy and paste, as I said before we got started, introduction, but could you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I think in there, because that sounds always kind of ghost. Tell me about yourself, and people get weird about that. But in terms of like, where'd you grow up, your background, and some of those early art experiences that have influenced your current practice?
Yeah, so I'm an artist, and I'm a collaborator, and I'm a child of an educator that turned into an educator herself. And trust me, that was a surprise to me. I'm a Southerner by birth. I'm a military dependent, and I'm also a county girl that grew up in the most northern county in Maine, which not a lot of people know. And I'm also a twin, and I come from a long line of twins on both sides of my family.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it's really wild. I love that. When I tell people I'm a twin, I tell them I came into the world understanding how to share space. But some of those early experiences that have influenced my practice, there are a lot of them. But what I think is one of the most important ones is something that my mother did. And so I'm a military dependent, as I said. My dad retired from the Air Force in like 88, 89, 90, something like that. I think it might have been 88, 89. And we moved off base into the town. Sure. And that was next to the base. So I became a townie, I guess. And we lived in this old farmhouse that was converted into an apartment building. And so there maybe were like 6 or 7 apartments in it, and then a few empty rooms. And my mom talked to the landlord and said, hey, you've got the basement empty. You've got these other 2 apartments empty because they're unfinished. Would you let me use them for storage and for, just to do some other things and spread out a little bit because there are 4 of us? And he said, yes. It was really great. And so my mom designated one of the spaces for me and one for my brother. So I had an art studio at a really young age. And that is truly a formative experience, because even though I didn't have the language to name what that space was, what she told me is that it is important to have a space that you make that is only for yourself, for you to do the things that you want to do. Yeah. And so I've always I've carried that through my life. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. And yeah, having that space that's for you, for what you're doing, it has intention attached to it. It is like, I bought a house back in 2016, and I was coming out of living in a studio apartment and literally using it as a studio. So someone would come over, they would see I had this convertible like table with the storage units within it.
Yes.
And it would just be microphones. It's like, did you finish recording? I was like, nah, I haven't recorded in 2 weeks. It's like, why do you have all of your gear out? I was like, oh, don't mind that. Just move out of the way. Put your pizza down. I don't care, if I'm inviting people over. So in transitioning to a larger space, in the process of purchasing the home and reviewing the property, I was like, what is the basement going to look like? Where can I put that studio at? And I keep all of my creative, and this is like very inside, but all of the things that I get something from creatively, whether it is my Funko Pops, whether it is a book about art or a book about screenwriting or even a book about podcasting or even little like pieces of work that people have given me that I've done like in live like experiences. I have like an altar, a creative altar or two actually in the studio space. And it's like, this room is for creativity.
Yeah. Yeah, that is beautiful. Yes, we have to have those spaces. My studio used to be in my basement, and I'm actually taking this call from the basement. And I thought, oh, I miss having it here because I could roll out of bed and roll, in here. And so currently my space is in Gwen Oak, in a building that's owned by Trisha Kiner and David Freedom. And it's really just beautiful because there's only 3 of us in the space. And it's in a historically Black neighborhood, and that environment just feels good and feels right. It feels right to create in.
That's great.
Yeah. But I was just thinking of some of those other kinds of experiences. Like I think being a military dependent really prepped me for being patient in relationship building.
Sure.
And so it takes me a long time to build relationships, and sometimes more slowly than I want. And it also has taught me to know when to step away from relationships that don't respect boundaries, because I'm moving in and out of communities, or had so much when I was growing up, and so it really helped me really establish what those boundaries were.
Yeah, boundaries are important, and I've tried to get better at that as things grow, and as there are more attention, there are more people who ask for things, time and resources and all of that stuff, and naturally, I look at things like, because my day job, I'm a data analyst, and I look for ways to kind of improve processes, right? So if I can make it easier and it just takes me like 10 minutes and it makes that person's load easier, cool. But then somehow I become that person that's has a reputation of being able to help. And then it's like, okay, I got a recording to do, or hey man, you can't call me right now. Can you just send me an email? I can respond that way. But being a little bit more cognizant and a little bit more able to say no, because this is like new to me, that people I kind of want that piece here and there, and are very out there about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about few art related questions, as we go into it. And I've changed the order a little bit, but so what feelings do you try to express in your work?
So, I have to say that was a harder question for me to really think about, because I was like, what feelings? I mean, I'm telling stories. So if you had said, well, what stories are you telling? I might be able to answer that a lot more clearly. But I thought, like, what are those feelings? And I guess I am trying to create seriousness about the subject matters that I'm working in. I want people to feel that they're important to me and therefore important to them, because they've invested time in looking. And also, often the size of the work is so large that even that kind of space investment makes people feel that it's really important and serious, even if there's a lot of humor or absurdity in those works. And I also want people to feel a sense of playfulness because of the way that I'm using my materials, because I am combining drawn line or a kind of traditional figure drawing approach to figure drawing or figure sketches. And I'm combining that with elements that I hope people recognize. They're collage elements that are taken directly from stickers. And so that familiarity. So I hope that makes the work keep it light and keeps it playful. And so I hope that combination keeps people invested. So I want them to feel committed to the work because of a lot of different things. Yeah.
Thank you. And with that, and not as if you just said it, but what stories are you trying to tell? What are the stories that you are most interested in telling, that really resonate with you, that you want to tell within your work?
Well, right now, I mean, I'm thinking about a lot of things, and Primarily, I'm interested in the narrative potential of particular bodies, right? So largely my bodies of work or my career has been about making drawings of Black women, whether they are depicted with brown skin or Black skin. But through the drawing and the way that I'm drawing them, I indicate that they are Black women because I'm actually drawing Black women.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested in the narrative potential of that, of who I'm drawing. And, and I am interested in things like land and connections to the land and racialized bodies and, and objects that are African objects, but they're a part of the tourist market. And so all of that I just said just takes you through about 25 years worth of work. And I think about how artists are conduits of social activism and social and political thought. And I'm interested in how how collaborations actually work and how collaborations actually bring me closer to understanding my own politics.
Yeah.
So, just a range of things, which explains a lot of why I'm involved in collectives and collaborations and organizations as board members. And so, yeah, I'm searching for that kind of, as my friend Rob Burrell says, where's your political home? And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to find my political home, but in art. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that, so those are the kinds of themes, those larger themes that I'm working in.
Yeah. Thank you for walking us through that. And like you said, distilling 25 plus years, like here is my 45 seconds, my hot 45 seconds. So bravo to you on that.
Awesome.
And yeah, I remember having this conversation with Devin Allen about just what our backgrounds are and how it's baked into our work.
Yeah.
And, and I think that there is that political standpoint in there. Like sometimes people are a little too overt about it, and they're at least from a podcast perspective, it feels a little virtue signaling. It feels a little like, okay, you're okay. You put a rainbow flag behind your logo this month. That's fine. But really, I think, if that is really what one is about, it's naturally going to be reflected in your work. So,
without a doubt.
Yeah. So if someone is listening to this, this series of podcasts, they can go through it and see that I'm into, pretty much people who have an interesting story. Storytelling is a big thing for me in this. And it's not purely this idea or that idea. And I also kind of have more confidence, as I think I was talking about with you before we got started, from a curatorial standpoint of I'm not just grabbing everyone. I'm kind of letting my taste and what my interests are and just being familiar with what's happening around me kind of dictate who I'm going to reach out to and what's the angle.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that you said that. You're right. I think that our politic or our values or our beliefs are understood through our actions, right? Or through our associations, through our relationships. And that's really important to me. So I don't do anything that actually doesn't support those kinds of values. It sounds really idealistic, but, we're in a world that is, a hot ass mess right now.
Yes.
And so the only thing that we can do is the only thing that I can do is be more anchored in my values and understand where the friction is when I have to, when my values butt up against some other thing or some other one, and know that friction is what has potentially created a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Or that friction is the reason why we step away and we become more invested in those values. And so I think that in my practice, in my overall practice, my values come across in the organizations and the collectives that I'm a part of. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
If it's missed in the work.
Yeah, because it was one of these questions I had, and I think you gave like the best answer, even though I didn't ask the exact question worded. Like you gave the best answer to that I've heard. Because I would ask people like, "What are your creative like non-negotiables?" And it's just like these are the type of people I'm working with. I'm vetting these people. I'm going through that process. It's like, do you match my values? Because I think here, and I'm just free jazzing, by the way. I think here sometimes we run into, and it's of varying degrees, like emerging artists that have been doing it. There's sometimes this notion of like scarcity and then opportunity, and those things get blended. And when the scarcity is at a certain level, you're like, all right, I need to get this paid for, or I want to be able to do this in this way. You have to see who's behind everything at the end of the day. And does that match with what one's politics are, what one's values are as a creator?
Yeah. What are my non-negotiables? Sure. When I make a statement that is based in my experience, and I say that I, as a Black woman, experience this. I didn't say I feel. I didn't say I think. I said I experience. Right. Yeah. And when someone's reply is, "Well, we all," and that's a non-negotiable for me. Or when we're talking very specifically about language, and but folks want to pass on certain kinds of language that they use because it's part of the culture or the vernacular. That's a non-negotiable for me. And, so I take really hard edges, and I blame that on being a Capricorn. Not my fault. It was just when I was popped out. So not me, I guess if I was born in December, I'd be a little bit easier. And then in the studio, it's interesting. I don't have a lot of non-negotiables in my studio in and of itself. And that's, for me, it's evident in the amount of things that I will be willing to do. Like I'll work on drawing, and I'll work on collage, and I will work, in sculpture and installation and animation. I'm working on an animation project right now. As I was saying that, I was like, what's a non-negotiable? Oil painting. Because I don't like the smell of it anymore. Yeah. And strangely, even though I teach with this material, I actually don't use it in my own drawing because I don't particularly like the way it feels on my nails. And it's a certain kind of charcoal that bugs me to no end. It's like a teeth thing for me. And so like, I can't do it. So, there are those, and there's a non-negotiable of people that are on certain sides of art worldness, trying to complete my work or make my work change. And so, that's a non-negotiable because I really feel protective of my thinking and my playfulness. Yeah. And a really kind of like awkward sense of humor. I'm really just trying to hold on to my awkwardness, right? I don't want to mask that away. So, those are some of the non-negotiables for me.
Thank you for sharing that, because it extends that conversation around like boundaries and all, and I think it's important to have those and really kind of like, this is why maybe I didn't do this, or this is why I didn't do that, and knowing it. So like, I know that I don't like Anchor. I don't really get it, or I have done different types of content, different types of podcasts, but maybe a video podcast isn't for me right now. I'm being fine with that, and knowing that, all right, audio is my thing, and for this reason. And even working with like outsourcing my work to a producer versus going through the process of producing it myself and editing it myself, because I rather capture 2 more conversations and do those interviews versus let me go through and make sure everything is good here on the audio levels. Yeah. And it's like recognizing that and just kind of seeing like being okay to do it, knowing how to do it, and knowing why this is not something I want to do in this matter anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see. I want to talk about scale. This was a question I thought was kind of interesting, because I feel like you maybe see somebody's work and you're like, I wonder if that would be maybe different how would that have the same reaction? Would I have the same reaction to the work if it was done differently, if it was bigger, if it was smaller, if it was maybe done in a different texture, or even done as a different medium. So, like, do you, in your experience as an artist or even observing art, have you ever wondered, like, would I have different feelings about this particular piece of work as if it was done in a different way?
Always.
Okay.
Always. So I make a lot of small sketches and drawings, and the intention of those is that they're always going to turn into larger works. But sometimes those smaller works actually become bodies of work. Those sketches become bodies of work. And so I say that because I've always made large drawings. That's always the intention. And so it's always surprising to me when something resonates at a 9x12 or 24x30, 30 size, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the best examples of that, where the scale actually increased in my work, is when I had an opportunity to do a drawing installation at the Baltimore Museum of Art. And it was for the Sondheim. I was a finalist for the Sondheim in 2015, and the piece was called Companion Constant. And I was making this work about Kalulu, the young enslaved Tanzanian child of Henry Morton Stanley, white explorer Henry Morton Stanley. But he's also referred to as an adopted son, and et cetera. And I felt that I have these small sketches, and I thought this actually will work. I'm using the stickers and I'm drawing, I'm using iron-ons, and I think it works. But when I had this opportunity, I kept thinking that the story of Kalulu is so large. This idea of having these multiple ways of being in relationship to someone who is a colonizer, ostensibly. How do I do that? And so he needed to be larger than life. Yeah. And so the figures in that drawing are about 75 inches tall. And they're based on their drawings or figure drawings of someone that I have worked with off and on for about 12 years. And, and maybe I love to talk about him for 12 years. But, it was interesting because on one side, it's the weight of African colonization. On the other side, he's the subject of colonization. On the other side, he's something else. He's someone that came from an actual place, and there are objects of Africanness embedded in the landscape. And so I don't believe that piece would have been successful even half its size. Right. I actually don't think it would have been successful life size, truly life size. So it needed to be bigger so that it filled the space, and that when I walked up to it, and I'm 5 feet tall, I walked up to it and I felt overwhelmed by that, by those figures, those bodies, and these landscapes that are, sort of growing out of the backpacks that he's wearing.
I remember I'm 6'4" for context, and and people never notice when they're talking to me. They're like, "You're short." I was like, and they're seeing me in person. I was like, "Oh, you're a thing. You're like you're a totem."
You're a big guy.
Yeah. And but I remember I was in a museum in New Orleans, and I'm blanking on the name because I haven't been there in a while, and it's a reminder I need to go back to New Orleans, but. I was in there, and it was kind of like this, wasn't bricolage, but it was kind of like found items that were used, like old tech, for instance, used inside of like this cabin. And it was inside of the museum, and everything was like gold. And it's like you're around all of it. And my partner and I, who she's 5'2", and we were both like looking around, and I just take a picture of her in like that kind of ratio compared to the size of the place. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, we're just enshrined in gold, and being inside of it, being a part of it, it's like you're experiencing it in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really important. Because scale shifts the way how you can place yourself inside someone else's narrative. Yeah. Right. And since you're a storyteller, I call myself a storyteller. Another example of that is with the help of artists and crafts folks in San Antonio, Texas, at Art Pace San Antonio, we built a half scale replica of my grandmother's home, basically from memory, and it ended up being like 12 by 10 by 7 or something like that, right? And it was turned upside down. But the idea is that it needed to be small enough to feel accessible like a playhouse, but big enough to feel unsettled because it was tilted on its roof, and I wanted people to imagine themselves in that. They wanted to get in, and kids were walking up to it wanting to get in and jump in, and adults were peering over, and it was this strange, like Gulliver's Travel experience, and so but yeah, I think that scale has the ability to help people become imagine themselves in that space, or imagine themselves in that story or your history.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We talk about, like, even from like audio, like an immersive audio experience, and that's just being in a different way. Like, we're looking at like virtual reality, we're looking at all of these different ways. I know there are more and more like virtual museums and such.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at I became members of the Maryland Film Festival at the Parkway, and I went there to see Jurassic World, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And I'm there, but the sound in the room that we're in is so nice that it felt like I was there. I was like, I'm looking over my shoulder. I was like, look, if there's a Dilophosaurus here or something, can you just tell me now so I can, kind of like plan things out, like how I'm going to fight this thing? But it made for an experience versus just going to the movies. And then that's an example outside of the way one traditionally looks at, I guess, fine art or what have you. But, it's a thing.
Rob, that's why I listen to books on tape. Because I really want that immersive experience, and I'm like so invested in that. I mean, when I listen to a lot of sci-fi, and the best ones are the ones that have like music in them and multiple voices. You can like the voice actor changes their voice, but it's better when there's literally another person, and it's exciting, right? And then there's sound effects, and I was like, yeah, I could totally be in the the 1920s sitting by the radio listening to that, right?
Yeah.
So
we'll trade notes, because I got some suggestions and I got maybe some contacts to connect you with, because we'll talk.
Awesome.
So let's see, I got a few more real questions I want to hit you with, and so let's see, is there an experience you would share that has helped craft or shaped your creative sensibility? Because I'm hearing whimsy, I'm hearing like, there's the political slants to things, what have you, but also there's this kind of like, gotta be playful, gotta have that whimsy in there. So is there an experience, like a life experience, that you feel that has helped shape, how you approach your work?
I think that just a lot of travel is really what has shifted the way that I think. I tend to, all my materials are portable in some way. Yeah. I work on paper because I think it's a seductive surface, but it's the material that I gravitated towards, as a child, because it's the thing that you can pack in your bag. My folks could pack in their bag and keep me occupied, and I think that being in communities with people that are actually not drawers is what really shaped it. So I don't really have a very specific one that has changed. You know what? As we're talking, I mean, I'm an educator, so I can't help but talk about school. Sure. But I really did not know what to do. I went to Tallahassee Community College to get my AA degree when I graduated from high school, because I literally had no idea what to do. And I ended up taking a bunch of art classes because I really liked art, right? I was always doing art growing up. And I ended up gravitating towards a teacher. Her name was Françoise Boisdonajou. And she was from France. And I think at the time that I met her, she was probably in her 50s. Was so like captivated by her because she wore gloves all the time, but it was because she was an oil painter and used her fingers for so many years, and it cracked all of her skin and everything. And there was something that was so violently romantic about that I was like, ooh, artists can do all of these things, and they can, and it was amazing. But she had the foresight, and when we talk about allyship, and we can have other conversations about allyship, but when we talk about that of white folks in academia and how they can actually do something that is meaningful for students of color, especially when there aren't many. She directed me to study at Florida State University with the late Ed Love. That changed my life. So that was a formative experience that really changed my life. And something that he said to me when I graduated with my BFA is, I was on my way, I was looking for MFA programs, and he said, make sure you go to a program where you can study with someone that looks like you.
Yeah.
And I kept that. That has been, I'm still talking about that, almost 30 years later, right? And it's one of the reasons why I chose the schools that I did, to apply for, and why I ultimately went to UT Austin. And it was so profound, and it moves me every time I teach classes and I have students of color, learners of color in my classes, because often they don't know me. They've never worked with someone like me. Yeah. And if there are Black students, I'm a unicorn like them. So it's really great. So, that was a very formative experience. I just absolutely loved and I appreciate to this day. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And in listening to previous interviews, I remember you mentioning that before about Ed Love. So that was it was great. That's great. Because I felt that too. I was like, it was that notion of, doing this for as long as I have, and always feeling like being an outsider and not feeling like, this matters or what have you. And I was like, I didn't find the people who are around me. I wasn't learning from the people who would be trying to learn the same things. And and it was one of those things, and I think I was kind of spoiled at being at a HBCU for like undergrad. I'm like, oh yeah, this is all the same, and then getting out, and it's like, you're placed here doing this, and these are the people you're around, and I'm not around people with similar backgrounds and sensibilities, and just around people that we're all united under where we work versus what our interests are.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So this is the last real question that I have for you, and because the rapid fire aren't real questions per se; they're just questions. But how or where or how do you rediscover inspiration when you're maybe feeling creatively dry, or you need to kind of switch it up to kind of re-spark things? Tell me about that.
Well, that's another hard question, because I rarely have downtime. I don't give myself a lot of downtime. And I'm very rarely bored. Like I can't think of a time when I've been bored. I can't think of a time when I have walked into my studio and not known what to do. Yeah. I might not know how to do something, or I might not be thinking through something very well, right? Because I could be very critical, but very rarely am I creatively dry. And I think that's because I'm involved in so many things that when I'm confused about something, or if I'm hesitant, there's a pause. I actually just shift my energy into another area. And I really think about how that has the potential to feed me in other areas. And so I'm very willing to say yes to a lot of things, because I actually know that it will impact the other things, the core things that I think about and what I do. And, with that said, I am a co-founder of a collective of 7 people called Kindred Craft. It's Kindred Creative Residence and Agroforest that's based in Fletcher, Vermont. And we are an LLC. It's a nonprofit. And we're really thinking about sustainability, creativity, art, and education, and how land heals, specifically for BIPOC and Alana folks. And so that has been very inspiring for me. And it has really enabled me to put into action some of the things that I've been thinking about, like at school or even in other kinds of collaborations. And I think my board work is a collaboration, and how I can embody some of those ideas and things that I've learned in those spaces in this way, and how that can inform something else. And so that was really exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think when you're able to kind of just change and just kind of flip it, it serves you in a different way. And I think when I start looking at what one's practice is, and I try to give myself like some degree of, I guess, grace where what's truly part of my practice. So like even what I'm going through, like meeting with people, being in a scene or something, I need to know who I'm talking to. I need to know about what are they facing. It makes it more intellectually curious. It leads to potentially better questions or what have you, or even, and I've been writing some proposals and stuff too, or even like, audiobooks or what have you. Like if I'm going there and I'm listening to a book about artwork or how to, maybe do better interviews, questions, or what's the creative journey like, that's working immediately. I have like a working document where it's like, all right, that's a good question. Let me type this in real quick. And that's how I flip it. I'll switch between books to kind of get different perspectives. That helps a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so you take me as a person that doesn't experience like the creative desert much, because you seem so kind of involved in things.
It's the Capricorn thing. I don't know. No, I think sometimes I overanalyze things a little bit, but I mean, I am dipped in so many different things that I don't really get bored. But I do overanalyze. I'm like constantly tweaking. Nothing's ever finished, as I've heard with painters. They never finish a painting. They just kind of stop. Yeah.
We might be related. Let's see.
We'll find it out. So that's kind of it when it comes to like the real questions. But I gotta ask you these rapid fire questions because inquiring minds want to know. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, golden milk from it's Taharka Brothers. They're in, it might be a different name of the place, but it's in our house. Yeah. And they have a vegan line. That's the best. It's the best because you feel like you're being healthy when you're eating it. Yes.
I like Taharka Brothers a lot. They're up there. I mean, I don't do the vegan thing quite yet or have you, but I do work a few more vegetables into the diet. But they have two flavors that I love because both of them have graham cracker in it. Is
that the key lime?
The key lime is phenomenal. Yeah.
When I first got here, that was my initial 20 pounds because that key lime. Sometimes the vegan, I'm just like, but it's key lime pie. That graham cracker crust, oh my God. It's so good.
I had the chance, I had the privilege, because I interviewed Vinny from Taharka Brothers, and I had the privilege of going to the plant and checking out the plant, and they gave me some ice cream and all that stuff. It was really cool. And they had this flavor. It was straight out of they were still churning it. And they were like, "Yo, you want to try this?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yes!" It was this like vanilla and Earl Grey. No, it was honey and Earl Grey.
Oh my God,
delicious,
dude! I'm so jealous. Hint, hint, Taharka Brothers, please invite me.
Shout out to Taharka Brothers. You see that van, you know what's up. What are you, so you touched on earlier the audiobooks, right? So what are you currently listening to?
Okay, so I'm listening to Nnedi Okorafor Lagoon again because I thought it was pretty damn fantastic, right? And it's the audiobook version. I have the book and sometimes I'll read the book, but like the audio is beautiful. And it really helped me understand through fiction, right? Through sci-fi, what it means to be extracted from the land, how certain bodies are being extracted, like people are being extracted towards certain bodies and also the lands in which they live on. And also, and then I'm also listening to Jacqueline Carey's Bane Reeker. And, so it's the range, right? And so that was introduced to me when I went to a residency years ago in Colorado, and this was the friend of the author, and she's like, "You should read this," and I was like, "I don't read romance, fantasy." She's like, "You want to read this?" And so I was like, and this is X begot da 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 begot and it's actually inspired a different kind of work while I've been listening to it, which is interesting because I've been thinking about Goya's Saturn eating his children, because of that. And then also this idea of consumption of both history and your future, as that's also connected to Lagoon. And so all of that seems to kind of mesh together for me in my head. It doesn't maybe make sense, but it makes sense like somehow in my head. Yeah. So
it's funny when you because I just finished doing the audiobook, D. Watkins' book, Black Boy Smile, and it's funny because he's reading it, so it adds a different dynamic to it where it's like, okay, yeah, that's actually funny the way you said that. And I don't know if I would have registered if I just read it, or that has a different tone to it. So again, it's something that enriches that experience when having it spoken or it read to you, and especially if it's by the author. And that's where I've gotten, where I've just realized that I'm a multitasker in that way. I'll buy certain books that it's like, all right, I want to have this, but otherwise, I'm still going to buy it, but it's the audio version because I know that I'm going to go to the gym. I know that I'm going to be on the train or whatever. So let's multitask.
Yes.
That's how I operate. And it's also on brand as a podcaster. It's like, look, I just need to have something in my ears.
There you go. There you go. Exactly.
So I got two more for you. Preferred mode of transportation: plane, train, automobile. How do you like to get car? Okay.
Car. You know what? I tell people this. My past life, I was either a truck driver, a stagecoach driver, or a migratory bird. If you want to go any length of just 8 hours plus, I'm your girl. I will drive across the country. Yeah, I'll be like, Bet, when are we leaving? I gotta go back right now.
I really romanticize the train. I really like the train for some reason. And it's just, I don't know, like I'm thinking about doing like a quick, because I'm doing this spinoff I was telling you about a little bit. And I'm thinking about going to Boston. I'm thinking about going to Delaware. And I'm like, look, I can just get on there via train and just make it happen.
Get on the train. The last train ride I took was in May, and I went from Baltimore to Burlington, Vermont. And that was magic. It was so beautiful. I loved it. You should come to Fletcher.
Yeah.
No, it was just magical. And I do like the train. Because I did a trek. I had a collaborator in Boston, and I was on that train every week. When I used to drink beer, one of the conductors said, "Oh, this is how you open the bottle." And he was like, click. I was like, ooh, click. And I felt like such a boss because, all the other passengers were like, she's awesome. I was like, yeah, I know.
I think the longest trip I actually took, it wasn't Vermont. I've gone to Rhode Island a few times, but the longest one that I've done, I think, was maybe Marlborough, Massachusetts.
Gotcha.
And I just remember it was like late November. It was for focus group work. And I was like, this was a mistake. Why was this the choice? It's cold. So here's the last rapid fire question I have for you. This is about habits, rituals, norms, all of that different stuff. Do you have any creative superstitions? If so, could you share one?
Creative superstitions.
Because I think of theater with this question all the time.
Yeah, yes. I have the exact same. I have this block of graphite that I bought when I was in grad school from the first CAA conference, College Art Association conference that I went to. And I have carried that around for like 20 years, and I have taken chunks off of it. And so some of those really big passages of value are done with that. And so I always use it in the work. And then I have a graphite holder that I always use. And if I can't find it, because I've left the studio untidy, like I actually have a hard time working. So I have an attachment to certain kinds of materials for sure. Yeah.
That's legit. That's legit. I have to have a certain headset on. I just tried these out for the first time. I'm still getting adjusted, but it's like if it's something that's a little too big, these are tight. They fit the way that I want them to fit. If it doesn't work, it's just like I'm having them off halfway. And then it just becomes part of my personality. Someone told me that I looked like I was wearing a fascinator, like those hats.
Yes.
And I was like, that's not the point.
Not the point. Oh, I have another one, and I'm actually going to pull it up because I'm going to read the names of these singers.
Sure.
So when I'm really in the zone of working, I will listen to the exact same song over and over again. And because I love this particular song so much, when I am in the zone and I don't want anything breaking it, I don't want to be distracted by dancing or anything, I listen to A Song for You. And so I have like 13 versions of this song. Donny Hathaway, Leon Russell, The Carpenters, Amy Winehouse, Whitney Houston, Ray Charles, Black Clock, Simply Red, Michael Bublé, Lynette Washington, Willie Nelson, Kind of Like Spitting, which is a band, and Eddie Rankin. So I have that. So when I am hitting the zone, my landlord might hear the same song, and like that's when it's like, don't bother me, don't knock, don't do anything. If somebody calls, I won't even answer, because that's when I know it's like, okay, let me do that playlist.
That reminds me of this John Mulaney joke, and he was just talking about the best day ever, best meal ever. And him and one of his buddies, they went to this place called the Salt and Pepper Diner in Chicago, and they loaded up, I think, 15 straight plays of What's New Pussycat.
Oh my God.
And then they had, instead of putting in the 16th one, they put in It's Not Unusual. And then everyone's like, and then What's New Pussycat comes on after it.
Oh my God.
So it's a version of that. That's it's great. It's great.
Exactly. They didn't get banned from, right? They didn't get banned from their website.
No, but they did mention it was like one dad he's hating his kids. He's like, you could tell he just got his anger management chip 2 days ago and he wants to just scream. It's really funny. So that's it for today. So I want to thank you for sharing and sharing your experience, your process, and your background with us, and even your favorite ice cream. And I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks where to check out your work, social media, website, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So people can always follow me on Instagram. I do love the gram. It's zoe.charlton.studio. So please follow me there. My website is zoecharlton.com. And my current collaboration, my collective, is called kindredcraft.org. So please check that out. And we have our first convening in August, and it'll be a small convening. So I hope people really check it out and want to come. But that's where.
So there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Zoë Charlton for coming on to the podcast and spinning a yarn with Rob Lee. I talk about myself in the third person. So until next time, there is art community in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for it.